Welcome back to another episode of Choose Africa. And today I woke up with a really exciting email that we were a finalist in the Outsourcing Impact Review Award, which is massive. If you're not an outsourcing company, you might not know what this award means or have probably never heard of it before, but for us, it was huge. So let me tell you about it. The Outsourcing Accelerator is this platform that was started by Derek Gallimore. He is, I like to call him like the celebrity of outsourcing. Like he is the go-to expert for outsourcing. There are entire countries that turn to him to help him develop their outsourcing strategy. Like he is at that level. And actually his story is really cool. He was a business owner in the UK, needed some support. His business was going to go under. He turned to outsourcing. It's what saved his business. He then moved to the Philippines, got involved with outsourcing in the Philippines. And now he runs the Outsource Accelerator, which is a marketplace and an advisory for outsourcing. And they launched something called the Outsourcing Impact Review. And that's because a lot of times outsourcing kind of has a negative connotation. And what they want to do is show that it is actually a powerful business tool. So they have this award and you can apply as an outsourcing company into different categories. They have an overall one, then they have one that's for health. So for outsourcing companies that are improving the health of communities or of this world. They have one that shows how outsourcing is helping education, one that's showing how outsourcing helps the community, and then they have the DE&I category. Now, the DE&I category is what we applied for. And that's because when you think about hiring a virtual assistant, unless you follow this podcast, you probably don't think of Zimbabwe or Ethiopia. You probably think of the Philippines. Or if you think about getting a software engineer, you probably think about India, but you don't think about Kenya. And so at CRDLE, we are applying, or we did apply for the DE&I category because of our work in promoting the African continent, which is often left out from the outsourcing conversation. I'll dive into that more later. But here's why I want to talk about the importance of acknowledging the massive social impact that outsourcing to Africa makes. Number one, there are not enough policies or incentives that promote outsourcing to Africa. And in fact, African countries can also, I think, do a lot more to make it easier to outsource to their countries. And so I hope that when we talk about the amazing work that outsourcing does in Africa, I hope that out of this, better policies will be made. Number two, funding. There is so much funding out there in this world, but not enough of it is going to outsourcing. So today, when I share all the work that we're doing at CRDLE, as well as outsourcing in general, I hope there are some funders out there, whether small or big, who hear this and choose to use some of their funding to increase outsourcing because it's massive. And there are so many things that I know if some funding went here, we could create 100 jobs tomorrow. There's just some low-hanging fruit, some quick wins we could do with amount of money. And I'm not just talking about CRDLE or an individual BPO company. I'm just talking about the industry as a whole. There needs to be more funding for it. And lastly, I hope today that this episode inspires people who are socially impact focused to hire from the continent. Just imagine if every nonprofit, charity, impact-focused CEO or every B Corp, if all of these socially impacted people would just hire from the continent, just one person, just a virtual assistant or just an appointment setter or just a marketing assistant to grow their LinkedIn, we would create millions of jobs. Now, I won't name them, but there is this really big faith-based charity in the US that does a lot of work in African countries. And so I reached out to them because I saw on their website that they had a lot of open positions for software engineers, for admin assistants, for customer service. And I said, hey, wouldn't it be so cool if you also hired from Africa? And their response was, no, we only hire from the US. And I was like, oh, what a bummer, because honestly, they could probably make more of an impact if they just hired from the continent than what some of their programs are currently doing. So if you're out there and you're social impact focused, or if you're a B Corp listening to this, please hire from the continent. It's so impactful. Now, let me dive into a couple of the reasons why we applied for the DE&I category. And that is because at CRDLE, our mission is to help more African professionals enter the global talent economy. Well, what does that mean? It means that there are these incredible African college grads who have education, they have the English, they have the skills, they have the talent. They go online, they see a job that's open to remote applicants, they apply, and as soon as the HR sees that they're in Harare or Addis Ababa or Nairobi, their application is denied simply because of where they live. That's so sad to me. Not only is that sad, but it's also just a real loss on the US company side. And so at CRDLE, what we do is we try and be the go-between that says like, hey, US company, we know these are your needs, and we know that the best person for the job happens to be in Addis Ababa. And then we kind of open the door, and we always just say, we can get the interview for you. We can't guarantee a job for a candidate, but we can get you an interview. And from there, it's up to you. And so that's what we're really proud to be doing. Number two, we really are trying to build a reputation for outsourcing to the continent. Because if you ask most people, where do you get a good virtual assistant? People would say the Philippines. And where do you get a good software engineer? Oh, from India. And while that's true, and there's nothing wrong with that, we want to help people think, oh, where do you get the best cold caller? Ethiopia. Where do you get the best virtual assistant? Zimbabwe. We want to build up that reputation. And third, when that reputation is built up, we also want to make sure that it's a good reputation. We want people to hire from the continent and have a good experience. And we've learned a lot of the systems and processes and account management needed to make sure it's a good experience. And we're really proud of that. So why does all this matter? There's a lot of reasons why outsourcing is so good for the African continent. But the biggest one is because it creates jobs. Now, if you don't know, African countries need to create 18 million jobs every year until 2035 to keep up with the huge demand of youth entering the labor market. And so that's a lot of jobs. And that's why outsourcing is so cool. Because, okay, we need to have factories. We need to have other incomes in Africa. But take, for example, a factory. It's great, but it can take years and a lot of money. It will take a couple years to build the factory, and then you have to hire the factory workers, and then you have to get a market for the product. There's a lot of things. So it's great, but it takes time. But outsourcing overnight, one time at CRDLE, I got a text message from a client and he's like, hey, Val, can I hire 1,000 people from you? And I was like, yes. I get requests all the time for 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, and outsourcing can do that practically overnight. And that's what I love about outsourcing. I actually was a social worker by education. I had my undergrad and my master's in social work. And as I was traveling the African continent during my backpacking trip and even living in Ethiopia for 8 years, one of the biggest things I saw was that there's so many talented people. And two, I also noticed that a lot of the nonprofits and charities in Africa aren't needed when people have jobs. Not all nonprofits, but a lot of them, they're not needed. For example, do you have to donate shoes to someone who has a job and can buy their own shoes? Do you have to donate a shoebox for Christmas when the mom has a job? Do you even have to sponsor a child when the child's parents have good jobs? No. And so there's nothing maybe wrong with some of those things if we just focused on the root issue, which is unemployment, and we fix that in a sustainable way. A lot of these charities wouldn't be needed, and they would be better off if everybody just had their own income and wasn't reliant on charities and aid. So specifically at CRDLE, when we were applying for this DE&I award, I had to share some of the things that we're doing. And so one of the things I shared is how we are probably, I would say, one of the biggest leaders in outsourcing in Africa. Now, yes, that is granted a small niche at the moment, but we are probably one of the most outspoken, well-known names when it comes to hiring from the continent, which is really, really cool. And shout out to the CRDLE team for helping me do that in such a short time. You know, CRDLE's only a couple years old, and we've been really lucky to create a really great reputation. And one thing I love about what we do is that most of our US clients come to us because they have a business need and they don't know, let's say, anything about Uganda when they come, but we do match them up with the best virtual assistant that Kampala has. And it becomes this really cool win-win and kind of a reframing of the African continent, because instead of viewing Uganda as a country of poverty, you think, oh, that's where so-and-so lives, and that person is the best admin assistant we've ever had. Now, when it comes to us being very outspoken about outsourcing in Africa, there are other outsourcing companies that are much larger than us, like significantly larger, but they are hush about hiring from the continent. So a lot of these Fortune 500 companies in the US, I'm not going to name names today, but a lot of them, they go to this one BPO company. If you don't know, BPO stands for Business Process Outsourcing. And then that BPO company outsources it to another outsourcing company that then finally hires people on the ground. So one, what this does is that there's a lot of middlemen. So people aren't paid well when they actually are doing the work. But two, all of these companies keep it a secret. Nobody wants to stand up and say, yeah, our customer service team is located in Ethiopia. But at CRDLE, we've taken the opposite approach, and we think, wow, it's actually really cool to hire from Africa. In fact, the most innovative, cool people, cool business owners know that it's awesome to hire from the African continent. And we want our clients to be so proud and so outspoken about that. And so, yes, at CRDLE, we apply for the DE&I category, not just because of the jobs we're creating, but because of how outspoken we are about how it is awesome to hire from the continent. Now, number two, another reason why we applied is because we pay super well. In fact, the average person who starts with us makes about 5 times more than they did at their last job. And we love that. We love paying people better. We think that they deserve it. And we also allow people to work from home. And that's because I work from home and I love working from home. And also, if you have ever been to, let's say, Addis Ababa, that traffic is crazy. So when people start working with us, they save on average 2 to 3 hours sometimes of not having to commute to work anymore. And because we allow people to work from home, we get tons of moms and dads applying. And they love it. They get to spend all day at home with their kids, with their baby. And then at night, they tuck their baby in and they clock in to work. And besides money and the ability to work from home, we have really cool clients. I'm not going to lie. I even get kind of nervous sometimes hanging out with some of our clients because they're doing really cool things. We have an ex-NFL player. We have a Harvard faculty staff that's now hiring from us. We have full-time YouTubers. We have lawyers. We have millionaires. We have even smaller women let's say female-owned companies that are startups just starting. They're not big, but they're awesome. They're on fire. They have such good energy and they're going places. And they are taking our virtual assistants with them and our marketing assistants with them. And it is so cool to see, let's say, a marketing graduate from somewhere on the continent get plugged into a really cool US company where they can grow and build their career doing some really cool things with really cool people. So yeah, at CRDLE, we are super excited about growing the reputation and giving people awesome careers and paying them well for it. But what our clients love is the KPIs that we're hitting. So we had this solar panel company who I think in the second month, month 1, nothing. We didn't get any leads or any sales that converted for them. But month 2, our cold caller converted $800,000 worth of new revenue through his cold calling efforts. $800,000 through a cold caller in month 2. I mean, crazy. We have med tech clients who are getting into these really high level doctor's offices because of our efforts. I think each one of their leads has like the potential to convert to like $250,000. We have this really sweet author who wanted to get his book reviewed with this famous book review platform. And within a couple months, our marketing assistant got him the introduction to do that. So, I mean, our KPIs and what our talent is doing for our clients is off the charts amazing. So yeah, that's a little bit of the reason why, we applied at Cradle and why, it's not about bragging or being overconfident. It's just knowing that we really are doing cool things and we are, we're just creating some really cool win-wins. And I'm really happy that not only are we being recognized for it, but the African continent is being recognized for their skills and talent and hard work. Now, let's take Ethiopia. I lived in Ethiopia for 8 years. My husband is from Ethiopia. He grew up in Addis. And it is currently ranked as the 26th, poorest country in the world. I need some more coffee so that I can speak properly. And side note, of course, the best coffee comes from Ethiopia, but Ethiopia is the 26th poorest country in the world. And even the capital city, Addis Ababa, the poverty rate jumped from 18% to 22% over the last 4 years. But then you take a company like Cradle, who then is hiring these college graduates who don't have access to great jobs. There's just not enough jobs locally available for them. And we hire them. We pay them 5 times better. We let them work from home. We connect them to really cool companies. Think of what that does in turning around the poverty levels when college graduates are making good money and plugged in to good companies. That's amazing. Now, I remember when I was living in Ethiopia, for a while was working with an agribusiness, and we worked in this commercial area where like the whole street was just factories. And one day we heard that there were going to be protests throughout the whole country. So my husband was like, just stay home. Like, you don't want to be out on the streets if there's protests. So I stayed home. A couple days later, I show up at work and I asked like, oh, and were there protests here? And the factory workers were like, no, like, why would there be? And I was like, well, there are protests everywhere. And they were like, not here. Like, everybody has jobs here. Everybody here is making money and sending their kids to good schools and doing well. Like, the guy, I remember he went on and he was like, I don't care if the person beside me is like Muslim or Christian or from this tribe or that tribe. Like, everybody just wants to, make money and show up and have peace in their life and be able to provide for their kids. And so, not saying that there's no discrimination or issues when people have jobs, but certainly when the youth are plugged in and making money and using their time to build up their career and provide for their families and build a future for themselves, certainly that does make communities more stable and peaceful overall, while still increasing also the economics in that area. Now, I could go on and on about Cradle and how proud I am of the work we're doing, but in general, I also want to touch on how the United Nations has the Sustainable Development Goals. If you're not aware of them, it's basically 17 goals that the UN has laid out. It's a call to action to end poverty and to end inequality in this world. And if you look at how outsourcing just in general supports these goals, it's incredible. Like, it's not just a couple goals, it's more than half of them. So, for example, let me just run through these goals. Number 1, the biggest probably goal that people know from the Sustainable Development Goals is number 1, which is end poverty. Okay, so again, when people have jobs, it is a sustainable way out of poverty. When they have good, high-paying, fair wages, it ends poverty. Second Sustainable Development Goal, end hunger. When people have jobs, they can buy their own food. Number 4, quality education. Now, education is actually one of the reasons why there's a good business ROI to hire from the African continent, because basically for decades, African governments have been educating their youth, doing a great job at it. And now there's all these amazing college grads who have education. They just need jobs. But at Cradle, when we hire these college grads who have some work experience, we also provide them additional job training. So it's continual education even once they have the job. Number 5, gender equality. I'm very proud to say that at Cradle, currently we're actually an all-female team, but the majority of people who apply for us to work with us are actually women as well. And I'm so happy that we can offer equal wages for the women on our team as well as the men, and to see that women who want to work can do that. Number 8, decent work and economic growth. I mean, that's kind of the definition of outsourcing, decent work and economic growth. Number 10, reduce inequalities among countries, among people. Again, that's why we are, I think, one of the finalists in the DE&I category, is because we're reducing the inequalities. Because outsourcing should be as known and as big in the African continent as it is in places around the world. And then, of course, there's so many other ways that you could take this in terms of creating sustainable cities and communities, which is also one of the Sustainable Development Goals. But I could go on, but again, the call to action here is a couple things. As the Outsource Accelerator says, outsourcing is a powerful but misunderstood business tool. So we have to reframe what our perspective of outsourcing is and realize that when done right, outsourcing has an incredible social impact. And outsourcing to the African continent, a continent that has really talented college graduates that need jobs and can't find them locally, it's even more impactful. And the takeaway here is that if you are, again, a B Corp or a socially focused person, I hope that you see that you should hire from the continent, not just because of the great ROI, but because it already synergizes with your mission to be a good company. And it's cool to hire from the African continent. So I hope you choose Africa when you're looking to expand your team. But I really also hope you just start to see that outsourcing done right can be a really powerful force for good. So let's spread this mission. Let's tell funders to fund more initiatives that help African graduates get the computers and the headset and the internet that they need. Let's tell policymakers that there needs to be more support and focus and initiatives that incentivize outsourcing to the continent. And let's tell our favorite companies and our favorite B Corps and our favorite charities that they should be hiring from the continent. Wow. Anyways, thank you everybody for listening to this. We will find out October 15th if we got the gold, silver, or bronze medal. Fingers crossed. But either way, we are super grateful that we get to be part of this initiative and to be part of these other incredible outsourcing companies that are doing really cool things. Make sure you watch their award ceremony that will be coming out because you'll learn so much more about what other outsourcing companies are doing to make this planet better. And keep following along, because once you hire, you're going to want some tips on how to make it work and what a virtual assistant can do and how to set KPIs for cold callers. And that's what this podcast will help you do. So thanks everybody for joining, and please like and leave a 5-star review for us.